Well, there was good news for the next president and for the current president, Joe Biden, in the Wall Street Journal today under the headline, "The next president inherits a remarkable economy." The next president will be inheriting the best economy in the world from Joe Biden. If politics were fair, Joe Biden would get credit for this country's remarkable economy. The issue of the day on the campaign trail was the stupidest person who has ever run for president telling American women, as Ali was just suggesting, what he is going to do to them, whether they like it or not. Donald Trump has the worst presidential campaign staff in history, but even they are smarter than Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is the only person in his campaign who doesn't know that his otherwise ridiculous staff is actually smarter than he is. And he proved that last night when he said this.
I want to protect the women of our country. I want to protect the women. Sir, please don't say that. Why? They said we think it's very inappropriate for you to say. I said, why? I'm president. I want to protect the women of our country. They said. They said, sir, I just think it's inappropriate for you to say, pay these guys a lot of money. Can you believe it? I said, well, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not.
And here is the other thing. Donald Trump has done to women his entire life, according to him, whether they like it or not.
Just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the You can do anything.
The Trump campaign staff knew that was coming. The people in the Trump campaign who were telling him not to say, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not, probably knew that that would revive Donald Trump's public confession of being a repeated sexual assaulter on that Access Hollywood videotape 8 years ago. But they were probably afraid, the campaign staff was probably afraid to tell Donald Trump why they thought he shouldn't say that last night. They were probably afraid to say it'll revive the Access Hollywood video. And so, because it's just a little too easy and logical to link what Donald Trump is saying about women in the campaign now to what he said about women on the Access Hollywood tape 8 years ago, that's why the campaign staff didn't want him to say that. If you're a star, they let you do it. Here is Donald Trump under oath in a deposition in the E. Jean Carroll case.
You say, and again, this has become very famous in this video, I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. Just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the you can do anything. That's what you said, correct?
Well, historically, that's true with stars.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by the
Well, that's what it's. If you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true. Unfortunately or fortunately.
And you consider yourself to be a star?
I think you can say that, yeah.
There was Donald Trump in an under oath deposition where it's impossible for staff to protect him and therefore impossible to hide how breathtakingly stupid he is. Donald Trump's stupid comment about whether women like it or not has revived the Access Hollywood video for voters who didn't know it even existed because they were too young 8 years ago and their parents shielded them from it. The Washington Post reports, I don't think any of my friends had heard it, said Kate Sullivan, a 21-year-old student in Ohio who heard the tape for the first time on her TikTok For You feed this week. We all felt equally shocked. She immediately felt compelled to share the audio in her own video with the superimposed text, "Fathers are voting for this man." The video has been viewed by 2.5 million times and was reshared by singer Billie Eilish to her 68 million followers. Here is the first thing Vice President Harris said on the campaign trail in Arizona today.
Did everyone hear what he just said yesterday? That he will do what he wants, quote, and here's where I'm going to quote, whether the women like it or not. And we must vote because this is the thing. You know, there's a saying that you got to listen to people when they tell you who you are, who they are. And this is not the first time he has told us who he is. He does not believe women should have the agency and authority to make decisions about their own bodies. This is the same man who said women should be punished for their choices. He simply does not respect the freedom of women or the intelligence of women to know what's in their own best interest and make decisions accordingly. But we trust women. We trust women.
Vice presidential candidate Tim Walz said this today.
Last night, Donald Trump said that if you're a woman, he'll be your protector. And he also said this. Imagine that this was a moment of self-reflection for him. He says, I know a lot of people don't like that. Oh, no shit, they don't like it. But here's the scary part, people, because there's no excuse for not hearing this, because he said it. He said, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. That's how this guy's lived his life. That's why he was on the Access Hollywood tape, and that's why he ended up in court, because that's what he thinks about it. This feeling of women right now in this, every age and every party. Here's what's going to happen on Tuesday. They are going to send a loud and clear message to Donald Trump on November 5th. They're going to send that message whether he likes it or not.
Tonight in Reno, Nevada, Vice President Harris said this.
We have an opportunity in this election to turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump trying to keep us divided and afraid of each other. We're done with that. We're exhausted by it. We're done with that. We're done with it. And Reno, this is the thing. We know that this is not who we are. That's not who we are. And it is time for a new generation of leadership in America. And I am ready to offer that leadership as the next president of the United States. Growing up, I saw how hard my mother worked to give her daughters the same chance our country gave her. And I was blessed to have family by blood and family by love, who instilled in me the values of community and compassion and faith. I've spent my life fighting for the people who have been hurt and who have been counted out. And people who never stopped, even then, believing that in our country anything is possible. I've lived the promise of America, and I see the promise of America in everyone here. It is in all of us. It is in all of us. It is in all of us. It is in the women who refuse to accept a future without reproductive freedom. It is in the men who support them. It is in the fathers and mothers who work hard every day for their children's future. It is in the Republicans who never voted for a Democrat before, but have put the Constitution of the United States above party. Promise of America and all the young leaders who are voting for the first time. And I'll tell you what I love about this generation, Gen Z. I'm going to shout you out.
you all, you leaders, you young leaders, as you are rightly impatient for change. I love that about you. You are determined to live free from gun violence, to take on the climate crisis, to shape the world that you inherit. I love that about you. And for them, I say to everybody else, look, none of this is theoretical. This for them is a lived experience. It's not political. It's what they're living. And to the young leaders, then I say, I see you. I believe in you, and I see your power.
Our first guest tonight has done something that no man has ever done. He has spent the last 4 years living in the vice president's residence in Washington, D.C. as the spouse of the vice president of the United States. The day Joe Biden chose Kamala Harris as his vice presidential running mate, Doug Emhoff's life changed utterly. And he decided in that moment to set an important ethical standard for spouses in Washington by completely giving up his career as a partner in a major law firm so that there could be no hint of conflict of interest with his wife's sworn duty as vice president of the United States. The spouses of Supreme Court justices have not done that. They have chosen to live not at a lower ethical standard, but at no ethical standard. It is sadly common for spouses of members of Congress, both House and Senate, to have occupations that present at minimum the appearance of conflicts of interest and possible ethical gray areas. And Doug Emhoff left his very high-paying job at an international high-powered law firm and took a gigantic pay cut to teach law at Georgetown. His teaching schedule has allowed him to never miss the important moments in his wife's life, the historic moments. This has been a presidential campaign in which Kamala Harris has had to deliver the most important speech of her life more than once, because the next big speech in this campaign has always become more important than the one before it. And after each of those, the first voice she hears is the voice of our next guest, Doug Emhoff, who joined me for a discussion we recorded earlier this evening. Joining us now from Nevada is the second gentleman of the United States, Doug Emhoff. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Great to be here, Lawrence. Thank you so much.
So you have been speaking on the campaign trail, also knocking on doors, sometimes, I think today, maybe knocking on doors. What has surprised you the most when you meet people out there in the campaign trail, especially when you go up to knock on a door?
You know, you're never sure what you're going to get, and what you're seeing is the passion, the enthusiasm, but also the emotion, and people are really getting what the policies that she's talking about are going to mean to them. Just today, I met a veteran who was literally in tears, thinking about what would happen to him and his life if his benefits were taken away, Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefits. Got very emotional. And he's going out there knocking on doors himself, trying to get his community here in Las Vegas to get behind Kamala Harris. I had a Republican actually run out their door. I hadn't even knocked on that door and just said, hey, I'm a Republican voting for Kamala Harris. You know, I'm choosing country over party, which is the message that we're getting out there. I spoke to another young woman, Puerto Rican descent, was so outraged by, what had gone on at that rally. And she said the future starts on November 5th. And so the message is getting out there. People not only can see Kamala Harris as president, but listening to what she's saying, the words that are uniting us, being a president for everyone, you're really feeling it on the ground, not only here in Nevada, but I've been, Lawrence, traveling for almost 15 straight weeks, and it's the same thing everywhere I go.
Yeah, in those 15 straight weeks, the Vice President of the United States has given the most important speech of her life a few times. The next one always becomes the most important one, as we saw this week at the Ellipse. And at the end of that speech, when she delivered what clearly was, at that point, the most important speech of her life, and probably will remain so. It's probably unlikely there'll be a bigger one than that before the end of the campaign. The very first voice she hears is your voice. You are that first person after those giant moments in her life. What did you say to her when you got out there on the stage with her after that speech?
I looked her in the eyes, not only as her husband, but also as a proud American who just felt like I was seeing the President of the United States. I just looked her in the eyes and I said, I am so proud of you and I love you so much. And it was, again, as you said, Lawrence, every single time that she's needed to step up, she's exceeded incredibly high expectations, whether it was, you know, the launch in July, whether it was her DNC speech, whether it was the debate against Donald Trump, and now. And she's just kept doing it the entire time. And again, my pride for her is not only as a husband, but also as someone who loves this country and wants a president that we can look up to, somebody who can be a president for all of us and somebody that the world can respect up on the world stage. And I think that speech on the ellipse, it just took the stain of January 6th right out of there. And up there you saw her as president. You can just see it, the way she looked, the way she sounded, and that is what I'm seeing out here in these final days of this campaign.
You know, I would also observe that you are offering America, especially young men in America, a moment on that stage in particular after that speech that I think could be very important to them in the age of Trump, and that is the model of a man demonstrating how to support the women in his life, the woman in his life. And the way, even the way you feature her as you walk off that stage, you're trying to step out of the frame almost and say to the audience it's about her.
Well, look, I love her very much, and sometimes when I get asked questions like this, I'm a little surprised because I think it's kind of the height of being a man is to support those you love, including your wife. And so for me, it's very natural. This is what I do, but she supports me just the same way I support her. And I had a great career, as you know, Lawrence, you've talked about it, and I miss it at times, but to be able to step away to support her as vice president and now hopefully as our next president, I do it gladly without any bitterness or anger. And then she's there for me. And as second gentleman, I've been able to lean into this role for 4 years, just as I expect to lean into the role as the first gentleman.
Well, your wife, the vice president, has had to help you, obviously, in a role that no man in history has ever played before. How has she helped you in this unique role in the White House as second gentleman?
Immensely. When I had to step away from my career, when she got tapped by Joe Biden to be on the ticket in August of 2020, I didn't realize that was the last day I practiced law. So when they took office, at first it was a little bit of a struggle, frankly, to figure out what I would do, what my role would be. But it was Kamala Harris who was the one who pushed me into issues like fighting anti-Semitism and hate. I'm the first Jewish person ever to be a White House principal. That was really her up until this very day, continuing to push me out in the face of so much hate and anti-Semitism to use that platform to speak out. And on the issues of gender equity, especially after the horrific Dobbs decision, I've been out there front and center advocating for women's rights and reproductive freedom and freedom writ large, because that issue affects all of us, not just women. And she's the one who's pushed me out there to do it. And also things that I didn't think I would be able to do on the ceremonial side. She said, just lean into it and have fun. That's part of the job too. And I've done that gladly, and I'll do that as first gentleman.
The one thing you had going for you is no man had ever done it better before. So you had that standard. I want to ask you about Monday. You gave a very important speech against anti-Semitism, and particularly citing the hatred, racism, and anti-Semitism that was present at the Madison Square Garden Trump rally. And I just want to read for the audience who didn't take in all of that, just one statement that was made from that microphone saying, the whole effing party, meaning the entire Democratic Party, this is not Trump speaking, it's one of his speakers, a bunch of degenerates, lowlives, Jew haters, and lowlives every one of them, every one of them. And that means the vice president, and it means you.
It's outrageous, it's disgusting, and it's just inappropriate. And anyone who wants to be president of the United States and does not condemn that, which I'm sure Trump did not, is unfit to be president of the United States, period, full stop. And this is just yet more of the gaslighting and the lies and the disinformation, this, like I've been calling this Trumpian fog, to distract the American people from what's right in front of their face. Again, you've got somebody in Trump who had the job, was terrible, degrading before our very eyes, unfit for any job, let alone president of the United States. And you have Kamala Harris, who was ready to be president, commander-in-chief on day one, will never denigrate her fellow citizens. She has said this repeatedly. She's going to be president for all of us, whether you voted for her or not. And she means it.
Also, in your speech on Monday, you said, referring to the quotes that we've learned from John Kelly, Donald Trump's White House chief of staff, he looks at Adolf Hitler's generals and sees something to admire. Let that sink in. You said that to a Jewish audience. When you let it sink in, when you hear John Kelly on tape quoting Donald Trump, saying that Donald Trump said, quote, Hitler did some good things. When you let that sink in, how do you feel?
Well, all of us should feel the same way. We should all be chilled to the bone that somebody who was president of the United States was saying these things behind closed doors to an esteemed four-star general in General Kelly. That should chill every single American to the core, that this man seeks the office once again. And it's not just General Kelly. You heard what General Milley said, calling him a fascist to the core. I mean, this is who he is. So again, people, we can't fall for the gaslighting, the disinformation, misinformation. Please look what is right in front of your eyes. Somebody, again, we cannot have a president who admires Adolf Hitler. We just can't. We need to move forward. We need to turn the page, and we have somebody in Kamala Harris who's going to be there for all of us, will never let us down. It's someone we can look up to, who we'll be proud of.
We just have time for one more question, and that is, how do you feel when Donald Trump attacks your wife personally? I don't mean politically. I don't mean about policy. I mean when he attacks your wife's intelligence, when he talks about your wife's race, when Donald Trump says these very specific, insulting things about your wife. When that sinks in, how do you feel?
Well, as a husband, it pisses me off, but as a first gentleman, someone who hopes to be the first gentleman married to the next president of the United States, we cannot be distracted by it. So no matter how I feel about it as her husband, I've got to put it to the side so we don't get distracted. So we focus on this mission of getting her elected, and that's what we've done for these 14 and a half weeks. That's what we're going to do for these next 4 or 5 days, because we know how important this election is, and we put everything we had into this. Our family has put everything into this, and like she's been there for me and my family, she's going to be there for you and your family. So we're not going to let anything get in our way. This is the only thing we talk about. This is the only thing we focus on. Our happy couple time will wait until after the election, and we're not going to let anything stop her from getting the truth out there and making sure that she is elected as the next president.
Second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, thank you so much for making the time for us tonight.
Great to see you, Lawrence. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that we could have kept talking to Doug Emhoff for the rest of the hour, but because of his busy campaign schedule, that's the amount of time that he could give us. Coming up, Senator Amy Klobuchar got the Electoral Count Reform Act passed through the Senate Rules Committee with an amazing bipartisan vote of 14-1. Does that guarantee that January 6th will go smoothly? Senator Klobuchar will tell us when she joins us next. The Senate Rules Committee, chaired by Senator Amy Klobuchar, has released a report explaining what to expect on Election Day and on election night, especially in the key battleground states around the country, including the states with key Senate races. It clearly explains the counting rules in each of those states and why, if the presidential election is very close, we will probably not have a winner on election night, and possibly not for a few days after that, just like 4 years ago. Senator Klobuchar, as chair of the Rules Committee, is a key player in the congressional certification of electoral votes on January 6th, and she wrote the Electoral Count Reform Act to clarify that procedure on January 6th. That law makes it more difficult now than it was 4 years ago to challenge Electoral College votes submitted by the states. The only member of the Senate Rules Committee who voted against the Electoral Count Reform Act was Senator Cruz of Texas, with the final committee bipartisan vote being 14-1. Joining our discussion now is Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. She's chair of the Senate Rules Committee, and she is running for re-election to the United States Senate. Senator, first of all, I can't thank you enough for this Senate report. I've already got my notes on the side here, because one of the things that you explain in here is exactly which states are allowed to start counting the ballots early before Election Day that are coming in by mail, and therefore will be able to report a lot more information on election night.
Exactly. And first of all, happy Halloween. And I had a tradition of going on Rachel's show way back on Halloween for about 6 years in a row. So I'm continuing that with the spooky news of how Donald Trump's trying to mess around here. However, there is a solution. The first you mentioned is that we have to understand that some of these states take longer. Pennsylvania, for instance, Wisconsin, not a big surprise to your viewers. They do not start counting the ballots under their state laws until that day of the election. Other states, many of them, are counting those ballots, opening them up early. A state like Michigan, another key battleground, has changed its rules so that for jurisdictions over 5,000, they're not going to process them. They're going to open them. They're going to have them ready to count. The reason this is all important to know is there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, the fact that we have these different rules in states, sometimes it's helpful because each state is a separate system. It helps us with international hacking and bad things that Russia has wanted to do. It makes us actually more secure. And we also have backup paper ballots now in 97% of the voting areas. It's just a few counties in Texas and Louisiana that don't have those backup paper ballots. So our election system has been secure election after election. But Donald Trump is trying to foment concern for, two reasons. One, he wants to scare people about voting on our side, and two, he wants to set the stage for what he did last time. Didn't work last time, but it was a nightmare, and this time we're ready with the change in laws.
Take us out to the end point of the process, January 6th, and how that might be different now because of the way that law has changed.
Sure, and I wasn't the only one with a hand in it. Susan Collins and Joe Manchin, Liz Cheney, a number of people involved in writing this bill, and I shepherded it through as chair of the Rules Committee. The Electoral Count Act has changed in some very good ways. It used to be that one person in each body, if you can imagine it, like a Ted Cruz, could object to the will of the people, and then we would have to debate that particular state for 5 hours, back and forth, back and forth. It actually could be a cause and a lever for a lot of mischief. So what's happened is it has to be 20% of each body has to object before you even can have a debate on it. Secondly, and this is really key, you can no longer have these fake electors that are put forward by legislators. The governor has to certify this. If you've got a rogue governor, there's a set process of going to federal court. And then finally, not relevant this year, but we defeated this idea that the vice president can somehow overturn the will of the people. So this was a significant bill with broad bipartisan support, and it's going to be very helpful if he plays by that old playbook again, as sadly it looks like he's trying to do.
And just to clarify for the audience, 20% of each body just to get a vote, just to get what we saw happen on last January 6th. But then to actually succeed in throwing out or challenging, that's a majority vote of each body?
That's correct. And again, I believe that if you look last time, even with what Donald Trump was doing, going into it, we had 90 votes. After the insurrection in the Senate, we ended up with 93, 94, depending on the state. And so I believe that this is going to make a major change because they were using it as a lever. And then, of course, he was sending that out and telling his supporters, you know, meet at the Eclipse, created that march down the mall, and they believed they could overturn it. They thought Pence could, which wasn't true, but we've clarified that. And then they thought they could somehow use individual members. Remember how they were pressuring them? Now it has to be 20% in both bodies, which includes the U.S. Senate, to even have a debate on this. And the debate can take hours, and that's what they were messing around with.
And there's some, you know, I mentioned the vote count in the Rules Committee because 14-1 is a very big deal on a vote count in this Senate. So when we're looking forward, and people out there right now are saying, oh, I'm sure there will be 20 Republican senators who'll be willing to challenge electoral counts from various states. There'll be at least 20 of them. That vote count of 14-1 in your committee is an indication that it's very hard to get even Republican senators to join that kind of movement.
Yes, and even with everything Donald Trump was doing last time, the vast majority of them in the Senate, I will say it wasn't happening in the House, but the vast majority of them held true. So I just think he is trying to lay the groundwork again and a complete assault on our democracy. Such a difference when you see, I love Doug's interview, when you see Kamala's speech, that beautiful speech, and her devotion to democracy, no matter who people vote for, she wants to have a democracy. Now, we got to have her win to have a democracy, but there we go. On the other hand, you've got Donald Trump that is basically fomenting these lies again, trying to make people not trust the process. And we know the only answer to that, it is to vote. It's not to doom scroll and just be sad and keep looking at all this stuff you see on the internet. People should volunteer on campaigns. I have been to Nevada. I've been to Pennsylvania. I've been to Wisconsin, helping Tammy Baldwin, down to Florida for the Harris Walz campaign. And I've got to tell you, Ohio twice, people are turning out for door to door where they can believe people and listen to them. You can be part of that. Your viewers can be part of that. So I would just suggest people looking up from their phones tomorrow morning, making a call to figure out how they can actually go and help make calls, go door to door, go to your next door neighbor state if yours isn't one, go help a congressional or legislative candidate. You're going to feel a lot better than just looking down at what Donald Trump says every day.
Senator Amy Klobuchar, I will see you next Halloween and many times between now and then.
Excellent. Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you very much. And coming up, Arizona is a must-win Senate seat for Democrats, and the Democratic candidate Ruben Gallego campaigned with Kamala Harris in Arizona today. Congressman Ruben Gallego will join us next.
And on top of my list is bringing down, sí se puede, sí. Sí se puede. Yes. And on top of my list, in that spirit, is bringing down your cost of living. It's an issue that we need to address, and it will be my focus every single day as president. I will give a middle-class tax cut to over 100 million Americans. I will enact the first ever federal ban on corporate price gouging on groceries.
That was the Vice President earlier today in Phoenix, Arizona, in a campaign appearance aimed at increasing turnout among Latino voters. Arizona Democratic Senate candidate Ruben Gallego also spoke at that same rally.
Pero el tiempo de votar es hoy. Entrega tu boleta o haz un plan para votar el 5 de noviembre. Because if we do that, If we do that together, if we fight together, we can, number one, defeat Kari Lake. Number two, defeat Donald Trump. Number three, fight for a better future. Because we are fighting to protect our democracy, our freedoms, and our future. And the only way forward is to elect Kamala Harris as our next president and Tim Walz as our next vice president. And cast that vote now.
The Gallego for Senate campaign released this ad.
States with strict abortion restrictions are seeing higher rates of maternal deaths.
She nearly died twice after being denied an abortion.
One of the first known deaths related to a lack of abortion care.
Think it couldn't happen here in Arizona? Just listen to Kari Lake.
Arizona will not be a state where abortions are happening.
It is not health care. It is the killing. It is the execution of a baby.
It's really almost a genocide.
I'm Ruben Gallego, and I approve this message.
Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego of Arizona, now a candidate for United States Senate. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. As you
Good evening.
As you come
Happy
down
Halloween.
the wire here, you got to campaign with Kamala Harris today. How important is that for Democrats in Arizona that both of you were able to campaign together today?
Well, look, we are in a fighting position to win this state, and every vote counts right now. And we need to make sure that every vote, especially the Latino vote, comes in. So we need to get out there and get excitement out, inform people how to vote. It's a very long ballot this year in Arizona, the longest it's ever been. So we need to make sure that people know what to do and know where to go. And this is why we're out there. You know, we're constantly still on TV, saw some of our advertisements. We're going to continue doing this. If you want to help us out, go to GallegoForArizona.com, because we're going to push all the way through the end to get every last vote out we can. Arizona's going to be a close state.
What is the closing issue, do you think, for the presidential campaign in Arizona?
I think, number one, abortion rights is still the topic of conversation. The women of Arizona are worried. They're worried about whether they're going to be able to control their bodies and their future. And so, you know, when you have a president who appointed 3 of the Supreme Court justices that overturned Roe, who did at one point say that there will have to be punishments of women who get abortions, or where you're running against like someone like Kari Lake, like I am, who was for an outright ban for abortion, an 1864 law, for example, that had no exceptions for rape or incest, and a mandatory 2-year jail sentence. So we need to continue talking about that. And of course, cost of living. You know, every time I have a conversation out there, I talk to people, I talk to voters, I make sure they understand that we are here to continue working, bring down the cost of living. We haven't won that war, but we are winning the battle every day. And as someone who grew up working class, having to work after school jobs to help my family, really understanding, you know, what it means when it comes to gas prices. I mean, we drove as far as we could, depending on what our wallet was, not how much we needed in the tank. When you have those experiences, you bring that to the fight, and it makes a difference.
What is your day one mission in the United States Senate?
Day one mission actually is to give directly to every American, especially parents, a child tax credit. This is the kind of stuff that would have been very helpful to my family. My mom found herself, unfortunately, having to raise 4 kids on her own on a secretary's salary. You know, being able to receive an extra $200, $300 a month would have been extremely helpful for her. It might have made the difference. You know, for example, for me, I didn't have a bed until I made it to my college dorm room bed. And so a little more relief for everyday Arizonans so they could pay their bills, you know, have a little more stress, and really understand that they can breathe better, breathe easier is going to go a long way.
As you go forward in these final days of the campaign, is there a particular constituency you feel you really want to target in these final days to try to get the vote out?
Well, we're doing what we've done throughout this whole 22-month campaign. We are talking to everybody, going everywhere, and we're doing, the most creative ways to do it. For example, with Latino working men, 2 days ago, I was serving up breakfast burritos as these men were getting off their, late night shift that ended at 6 a.m. And the reason I did that is because I used to work that type of shift work when I worked in a meatpacking factory, in high school. And so for them, the opportunity to actually have some good food as they come out of work and be able to have a conversation was the best way to reach them. Tomorrow we're having a old school charreada or jaripeo, which is a Mexican rodeo. We're going to have a band. We're going to have people riding bulls. The whole 9 yards. At the same time, it's a family friendly event, but we're going to be able to bring a lot of Latino families together and talk to them again about being engaged in politics. But we're not just obviously staying and talking to Latino communities. We're also going to be talking to every other community that we can in Arizona now until Election Day. So if you're interested in helping us out, you want to show up at one of these events, go to Gallego for Arizona. We'd love to see you there or help us support us.
Ruben Gallego, candidate for Senate in Arizona, thank you very much for joining us.
Gracias.
Thank you. And coming up, we'll hear more of what Vice President Harris and her running mate, Tim Walz, had to say on the campaign trail today. That's next. Here is more of what Vice President Harris and her running mate, Tim Walz, said on the campaign trail today.
With 5 days left in this campaign, my opponent is also making his closing argument to America. And you've probably seen a bit of it. It is an argument that is full of hate and division. He insults Latinos, scapegoats immigrants, and it's not just what he says, it's what he will do. If elected, you can be sure he will bring back family separation policies. Only on a much greater scale than last time. And it is time then to turn the page on Donald Trump. We are done with that.
You would think over 80 years you would understand how a tariff works. Smarter people than Donald Trump, which is a good chunk of folks, CEOs of companies like Black & Decker, AutoZone, and Columbia have gone on the record to say if Donald Trump goes forward with this plan, they will simply have to raise prices and pass it on to you. Donald Trump saying China will pay for those tariffs the same way Mexico paid for the wall that he never built. It's not going to happen.
We'll be right back. That is tonight's last word. I'll be here tomorrow night at 10 p.m. for the final Friday night before Election Day. Hard to believe that's where we are.